I'm still scared of starting this.
I know, I don't know how to.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about, Alana Commando, you have such a cool last name.
Thank you.
So when you guys arrive somewhere, people are like, the commandos are here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? You get that?
Yeah. People often ask about my last name, like even if I'm at a bar or wherever I have to show my ID. So.
Yeah. Does it have a meaning or anything? Or is it just a commando we all know?
Well, in English it has like two meanings. One is like commando, like a general in the army. And then the other is commando, like, I guess it's like no underwear or something, but that's like the slang. So when I was a kid, I would get made fun of for that.
Oh, yeah?
But now no one thinks that. Everyone just thinks it's cool, but...
Yeah. It is pretty cool. I told you about my last name, right? So Jacoby, it's not supposed to be in that region, but that's one of the stories behind it, is that it's probably one of the lost tribes of Israel that made their way towards Afghanistan. There is actually a book on it too that they did research. I think there are 8 tribes, right? And one of them traveled that direction towards Afghanistan, and then that's the lost tribe.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and then there's an area in Pakistan, in Peshawar.
Okay.
And they have last names and certain words in their culture that also kind of hints that it's probably coming from the like Hebrew language.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my commando is Italian, but it's not like actually Italian. It's like Ellis Island changed the name, you know. So it was like Commando before in Italy, and then turned to Commando.
Yeah. Italian is pretty common here in New York.
It is.
There's a joke. Someone says, "I found an Italian guy," and then the guy and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're from Italy, New Jersey."
Yeah, or Long Island, Staten Island.
There's a lot of population Italian in
there's
Long Island.
Lot. Yeah, my dad's entire family is they're from Brooklyn and like Manhattan, Lower East Side, and then they moved out to Flushing, and then they moved out to Long Island after, and I went to high school with like almost all Italians. So. Yeah, like New York Italian, but.
How was Long Island going to school there?
Well, it's so mixed, like different districts are, like some of the public schools are better than others, but the area I grew up in was like, the funding for the public school was really good. So it was nice, it was walkable, very small town, but like good arts program, so that was cool. A lot of my friends growing up were into music, so I had a lot of exposure to that. Yeah, and right on the Long Island Sound too, so on the North Shore.
By school you mean like grade school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they have programs over here too? Like you have different like art school and then...
Well, that's more so in the city, but I mean they have private school and stuff like that you could apply to, but the public school you could just take classes.
Yeah. So the one that you went to was a public school?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's always also fascinating to me, people growing up here in New York City. I always want to know how that thing is. I guess Long Island might be a little different.
It's different because it's the suburbs.
Yeah.
So, like, most people from the city would say, like, where the subways reach would be considered in the city, but because you can't take the subway to where I grew up. So, it really was, like, suburban.
Yeah. This one time I was in a park in Manhattan, and there was 2 drag queens. They were performing. There was a grandma knitting something, and then there were 2 kids right there. And for a second, I was like, just look at what people are exposed to so early on. Like, and then this kid is probably ready for everything in his life, right? You see everything in New York City.
That's so true.
Yeah. So I think you are born open-minded here in New York City.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good place to grow up because then wherever else you go is going to be, at least in the States, like a lot calmer.
Yeah.
But I haven't lived that many other places, like mostly in New York, upstate New York, not too far upstate, but then I also lived in Houston for a little, so that was
Oh,
like
yeah?
my only other kind of city that I explored.
How was that?
Not my favorite. It's not bad. Like it's honestly, the art and music scene is great there. But it's not walkable, and I'm not used to that. Like when I think of city, I think like public transit, walking, and that's not the case there. It's very much like car centered. You have to have a car to get anywhere. There's like pockets of things to do. It's not like, you know, like in the city you can kind of go anywhere and you're gonna find something. And if you were to walk 15 minutes like from my apartment to a bar, you're on the side of the highway. So
Yeah.
I wasn't used to that aspect of it, but it was cool. I liked the weather. It was warm.
And everybody is talking about the river that everybody is using in Austin. Is it Austin?
Maybe. Well, a lot of people are moving to Austin right now.
Yeah, because everyone compliments them for having a river and everybody using it.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of cities
Like
they
for
have,
swimming.
yeah, for
That's
kayaking,
Austin, yeah.
swimming, everything. Because a lot of cities they have rivers like we have here.
But you can't swim in it. Or you shouldn't swim in it.
Yeah, and we don't use it pretty much for anything except
No.
the ferry, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people doing like stuff in it,
Yeah.
and they probably shouldn't be in it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen people kayaking, but they're
Yeah.
like 15 same people.
Exactly.
But you also lived upstate.
Yes.
New
yeah.
Paltz.
I went to school in New Paltz, and then I moved out to like Kingston area right after I graduated, but stayed up there for a few years before I moved to Houston. So, but it was really beautiful up there, and I would definitely live back there, but it just wasn't like, it's pretty small, so I feel like I just wanted something that was gonna have more action, to be honest.
So that's where you went to college too?
Yeah, that's where I went to college.
Oh, wow. So New Paltz School of Art, is that what it is?
No, it's a state school, so it's just SUNY New Paltz.
Why is New Paltz artsy?
I think it's just like the culture of the town, maybe.
Yeah?
Kind of like reputation of like a hippie town, so a lot of
Yeah.
like, you know, murals and street art and like live music, and which is cool, but I don't know, like the school itself wasn't necessarily an art school. It was a state school, so they had a bunch of different programs.
Yeah. Disturbing us. So, what was I saying? Yeah, Woodstock is the same.
Yeah.
But I think people who are actually artists, they live in New Paltz and then they retire in Woodstock. That's kind of the feeling that I have.
New Paltz is definitely younger than Woodstock.
Yeah.
Woodstock is a similar kind of vibe. Like, it's pretty, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like a lot of, I mean, not to talk shit on Woodstock or New Paltz,
Yeah.
because it's beautiful, but
Yeah.
it is, at least like the art scene there I found was very much like people who have money already that just kind of want to like fund their own practice and like their small community. I didn't have the best experience with like the community in the art scene there, because I did feel like it was a little gatekeepy and really based off of who had money and who had like the space to
Oh,
kind of
okay.
show things. And it's like, it is like that in New York City, but because there's so many people, you can kind of find like a group or like a niche, and it felt kind of dominating up there for me. But I wasn't there for long enough to really know. There's a lot of great opportunities, and I have friends who are still up there who like, mostly in music, but they're like pretty successful in those areas. I just had a hard time with it.
The gatekeeping, I didn't know about that. Is that a thing here in the New York City as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? So how does that work?
Well-
what do they think? What is the problem?
It's like not, I think it's because it's so competitive that people have this like mindset of like, there's only so much to go around.
Yeah.
So they don't want to share their contacts. They don't want to kind of like give you the opportunity to get one step ahead of them. Not everyone, but
Yeah.
that's like the reputation, I would say.
Yeah. You see that kind of thing, it kind of kills the art culture too. So eventually it's not good for anyone, I feel.
Exactly.
Because I think there are time periods for every not maybe for every, but for different skill sets. Right now, we are going through, maybe in the United States, we are going through tech and software engineering. That's the time we're going
Definitely.
through. But when you read the books, there was a literary time that all the authors were the rock stars, the poets were the rock stars. And then there was a time where the artists were the rock stars. So I kind of feel if you start gatekeeping, you will have eventually like a handful of people, and they may not provide you the variety, or they may not be the people that have evolved with the society as well, because society evolves. I mean, you are young. Your art evolves or builds on top of the art that people came before you. So I think, and it's always hard with changing group thinking. Like if that's a culture, I don't think it could be changed easily.
Yeah, I think with that too, like, it's just not representative of the full scope of what the culture is
Yeah.
like in that moment in time. Like, I think that sort of like gatekeeping attitude and just like way of approaching art ends up, like you said, limiting what you're really able to like kind of push out there.
Yeah.
Because it does end up just being like a handful of people, and usually those are people who have access to connections or access to money or access to like something that's going to give them that like spotlight. And it's not representative of like the full culture. Like the New York City art scene, for instance, has so many different aspects to it, and if it was, I mean, it kind of is like that. Like it's kind of hard to become a really well-known, successful visual artist. So it's really hard to like get a sense of what like the culture is putting out there based off of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And also the good thing about New York City is that you don't have a place where you go and say that's where the artists live.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a thing.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, just find 5 people and start your own thing.
Exactly.
You have your art center, right? You run for art.
Yeah, and that's basically exactly how we
Oh, really?
came up with it. Yeah, like I moved I moved from Houston back to Long Island, was there for like a few months, and then moved into the city, found a random roommate, and we started chatting one day, and we're very close now, so it just kind of worked out, and I was very lucky. But we chatted, and we were talking about how difficult we felt like it was to re-enter the art scene, and she's done performing arts and literature and stuff, and I was doing visual art, and we were kind of like, basically like you just said, what if we just started our own collective, and like really all you need is a handful of people to kind of get the momentum going. And we were really trying to make sure it wasn't like a group of friends, because that was defeating the purpose in my head. Like I can go and hit up any of my college friends or high school friends and we can do something with art, and that's great, but you're not going to outreach that far when you do it like that. So the main goal, like we had access to this gallery space, and that was because of someone I went to college with, and like the goal was we need to, if we're going to put people in the show, it can't be a direct friend of ours. It can be 2 or 3 steps outside of our circle, especially for the first like or second show, because that's the way you're going to outreach the furthest. And we just did that like by word of mouth and by Instagram, but that was like the kind of immediate goal. And now that we've been doing it for a while, we can kind of like involve our friends a little bit more, but we sort of set that rule for ourselves. Like if we want this to be actually accessible, then we can't just like call up our friend, because that's not doing exactly what we are like setting out to do.
And what's your goal for this? Do you really want to make it like really big?
We've talked about it a few times. Our goal keeps changing a little bit. I think in the beginning we were like, we really just want to, build up a community of artists and give people the space to like connect with each other and find opportunities within that. And that really is the same general goal, but there was like a period of time where we were thinking about how we can monetize it. And then we sort of like paused and we were like, wait a second, we need to monetize at some point, but we're still pretty new, and if we really want to like make money off of this, we need to make it as genuinely like, I don't know, as progressed as possible before we can start figuring out ways to actually make money. Right now, the main way is like by people selling art at shows, and a few shows we've had, like we've charged at the door like $5, you get alcohol, whatever. And those are kind of the only ways we've made money. So it's nothing significant, but it's enough to keep it going. So like we're kind of back to our original goal of just like, we just want to create a space that is open, like welcoming, that you can, as an artist, like show up to and not feel like you're walking into a room full of friends and you're the outcast. Because we found that a lot of shows, I would like, personally, I would go to a few shows when I like first moved back to New York just to like kind of suss the scene out. And there were like a few of these like DIY spaces where you walk in and everyone kind of looks at you because they're all talking to each other and they're all friends and they all know each other. Yeah. And you kind of feel like an outcast. So we wanted to make sure we weren't doing that. And because of that, I feel like we've been able to connect a lot of people. I mean, like even you and I, like, and that's just kind of how it works. Yeah. And one part of it is that as an artist, like collaborating helps your work personally because you can view other people's work, you can talk to other people, get a sense of their process, you might get inspired by that. So that's like one prong. And then the other prong is like just having a space where you can reach out to other artists, advances your career and theirs. So it's like a dual thing, like just trying to focus on community as like the forefront.
Yeah. Do you also think that there is some... So right now the culture I feel with bigger galleries is that they try to show that this thing is expensive, we are exclusive, and not everyone can afford us, and that's how they start making money. Yep. Now what you're doing is pretty contradictory.
It is.
To that. So will this start making money if you continue doing it like this?
Well, that was what we had to pause on because we were sort of for a while thinking like, okay, we've had like a bunch of successful shows, but we haven't made money. So what if we started reaching out to some galleries in Soho as curators and just seeing, and then we like had to stop ourselves. And we were thinking about that for a while and we were like, this is cool, we can grow it in that way. And then it just got to the point where we were like, wait a second, that's the exact opposite of what we were trying to do, because we're just going to end up moving into that space. Yeah. And neither of us are like experts in that area either. Yeah. So it really would just be like us faking it in that space, which is fine. That's how a lot of people do things, but it's less interesting. That's not what we wanted. That's not accessible. Yeah. And the thought was maybe like, okay, if we get in those spaces, we can make it accessible, which is half true, but it's not like promising. So the model that we've been doing, I think, is the most reliable and also the most like honest. And
probably very hard to make money off.
Yeah, it's impossible right now, but it's okay. We like had another conversation the other day where we were like, I think we just need to start investing some of our own personal money into this, and like it's the only way we're gonna keep it going, to be honest.
So what is the investment gonna do to it?
Just for gallery spaces, really. Like we just need to be able to pay for spaces because we don't have our own space, and luckily, like with our last show, that was free, so that was super helpful, and that was because of the connection with like an artist we've worked with. So like finding spaces like that, but we also do have like a standard that we want to follow, and we do want to be showcasing work in spaces that are like somewhat professional. So like it can be a little abnormal in the sense that like the last show was at someone's house, or like maybe there's something really interesting about the space itself, but we don't want to go to like the Bushwick Warehouse route where it's just like kind of dingy rundown spot. So we're trying to find a balance with that, and that does mean like putting money into certain galleries that we do want to work with that like are kind of representative of what we're doing.
Is there anyone who has done this really well at a larger scale?
Not like in the same way, I don't think. I feel like in different eras there have been similar things, but current day, like there are definitely other collectives that we've like been in contact with that are doing similar things, but there's no one that's like blown up really. So we're all kind of just like doing the same thing, finding ways to like collaborate with each other and seeing how far it can grow.
Because one of the things that I feel is the same with restaurants as well.
Yeah.
Because if you can sell, well, of course you have to have good food, but if you can sell the idea that we are expensive and exclusive,
Yep.
and our chef is the rock star, then you can start making money.
Yeah, the restaurant thing is funny because obviously that's like how I actually make money.
Yeah.
But there's so many spots, especially in New York, where really like sometimes the food isn't that good and it just has hype around it.
Yes.
And that's either because of like a name of the person who opened it or a chef, or it's just like a fantastic location and like people, I don't know, like the space is great. So it doesn't have to be good really.
Because there's a restaurant, I wish I remembered their name, but it's next to the comedy club. On 4th Street next to
in
NYU.
the West Village?
Yeah, NYU.
Okay.
There's an Italian restaurant. It's super cheap, extra good food.
Okay.
Probably one of the best Italian restaurants that you can go to in New York City. And then every time I go there, it's not that that price, the lower price has actually brought the quality of the place, the way the place looks, the quality of that down, because that's another thing that you have to pay attention to. Because as heartless as this may sound, you don't want to bring it so down, the quality, so that the bums start showing up.
It's so true.
So that's no matter how hard we try to separate ourselves from being that kind of a person, but there are things that push you towards that mindset.
Yeah, it's true.
So that place has done it really well. And then the other thing is that the restaurants in Astoria, when you go to Astoria, you feel like the tariffs, the global economy, none of it has actually got to Astoria. So I don't know how.
Astoria feels like 10 years behind for some reason.
They have their own economy.
They do, yeah.
But that's probably also a thing, like with the city so big, you could probably have microeconomies.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right?
Yeah, different boroughs have different ways of functioning. Like what's popular in Manhattan is going to be different from what's popular in Brooklyn. What's popular in Williamsburg is different from what's popular in Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
And that's within one borough. So it is actually interesting how that works.
Yeah. Do you think, what do you think is the coolest borough? And do you think it's Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think Brooklyn, I mean, it's so big and there's so much going on. Yeah. I also think Manhattan is like,
they had their time.
Maybe right? That's true, yeah. They had their time, but it's like, it's so big. There's, you can go anywhere in Manhattan. It's going to be different. So it's like, I don't have any interest in living there right now. It's just too many people, but that's why I would say Brooklyn compared to Manhattan. But
yeah. And also, one other thing that I feel would change the art scene here in New York City is one influential person kind of breaking that rule. And that person have to have a very significant amount of influence.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that always fascinates me is, do you listen to Joe Rogan? No? Like the amount of influence that person has. Like
yeah, I mean, I know I just don't listen to him.
Yeah, but he's probably the person who changed Austin.
He did, yeah. Right? By moving there.
Yeah, and then he did it for comedy. If you have someone like that doing it for art here in New York City, that's going to be big.
I know, but it's hard because it's just never representative of what everyone is doing,
Yeah.
But I agree with you. That's always like,
yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing with Donald Trump is that he's the person, And if you have one influential person, then it can affect a lot of people. Yeah. So that's great, but it's also kind of bad because then you have one person influencing anything.
Yeah, yeah. But also, I feel the general public, we don't, like us included in them, we don't give them enough credit. General public do know
That's
a
true.
lot. So if they are influenced, they usually are influenced by someone who deserve that
That's true. Yeah.
that thing. But and then probably sometimes it's due to circumstances that pushes you
I
a
think it's a
certain
lot
way.
of it. Yeah.
That pendulum swinging in a culture.
Exactly.
That also. But yeah, so that's what I think that could change, because New York is the art capital of the world.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So, and because I was Googling, like, what's the art capital of the world? And it's New York.
And the AI review came up.
Yeah. You Googled that too?
No, but I
No.
just imagined that AI, summary.
Yeah, so it is the art capital of the world. And I don't feel like it. I mean, it is very artistic than any other place that I've been to. But if I say the fashion capital of the world is probably Milan,
Yeah.
that really, really suits that title.
Well, this is an interesting conversation because I think in a lot of ways, like European countries have done it really great in like high end ways. So like high fashion, high art, really like strong pillars of music and artists in like a really like kind of influential way. And I think that New York has more of a robust like DIY scene, so maybe a little more accessible, a little more interesting in that way, where you're not following one kind of set of rules. There really aren't rules here.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so much different in like, and does kind of make it the art capital and lends itself to that, because it really is like anything goes. People are making the craziest art here.
Yeah.
I've seen so many weird like performance art pieces, and just
Yeah.
like you can do anything, and the DIY scene is so strong. Part of the reason why is because it's so expensive here.
Yeah.
Like, so you do have to just kind of do things out of a warehouse or at your house or something, and that stuff's really cool, and I think really interesting when you're coming from a culture of like high-end art.
Yeah. Bad timing for that sip. The awkward pause. But I see your art. That one painting. You know what I'm talking about. Do you have name for your paintings?
Well, I always change them, so I never remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one with the little drop on a really large landscape kind of thing. The perspective
the one that
lines
you
going.
were pointing out earlier. Yes, yeah.
That painting, I feel like it's such a high quality painting.
Thank you.
And then eventually one day I'm gonna be able to afford that and buy that. Yeah. So one of the things that I've always been thinking about is that the city also influences your I say class of thinking.
Okay.
Because if you live in a very small place, it's very hard to produce stuff that are world class. But if you go to a city, that comes very easily, and kind of that being in proximity to all these other artists, it kind of pushes you to another level.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like for that piece that you have, I always feel like it's a whole other class of itself, that single piece. So I guess it's probably, how did you come up with that idea? What made you draw like that?
I think part of it is like the landscape pieces that I do are so different from what I see on a daily basis. And when I moved upstate, I was really fascinated by just like the flat plains and just like these meadows that like you could just look for miles and miles and not see anything. And that was really fascinating to me, and it still is. And I was very inspired by like the desert for that reason, because it's very just like vast. So I think that's kind of what like inspired that way of painting for me. My drawings are different because I have a harder time capturing that vastness with the materials that I use, but with painting it's a lot easier, and like the horizon line can kind of just blend into the sky. There's also an aspect to it of like the ocean and like being at the beach and just kind of looking on the water and just seeing nothing. So I was definitely inspired by that, like, and that's partly pulling from my surroundings, but also partly with fascination for things that I don't see on a daily basis.
So one of the things that you said about the vastness, I feel like your paintings give that feeling of vastness. The one that I got or I'm getting, that doesn't have a name either, right?
I don't remember. It's probably untitled.
So that untitled painting, the same thing goes over there, even though you don't have any perspective lines on that, but it does feel like a small little cabin somewhere in Arizona.
Yeah.
Because it's the red sky and the red. So that kind of feeling I get with all these art pieces that you have. So it's pretty much all of them have an aspect of vastness.
Yeah, I guess they do.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, why? Why is that? Why are you fascinated with vastness?
It's just so different. Like, I mean, in the suburbs, that's not what you see ever.
Yeah.
In the city, that's not what you see ever.
Yeah.
You can't see past, like, what's right in front of you in the city.
Yeah.
It's just so many tall buildings, you can never see a horizon line. So it was very fascinating to me to be able to see a horizon line and be like, wow, you can really go very far out. And I think growing up, it was just never something that I saw. So I was like, this is cool.
So that's pretty comedic too. Yeah, you grew up here with all these cramped
and so many people
apartment
and too
spaces, and then you started drawing
or
all
like
these
in the suburbs, just like houses. There's nothing that you're looking onto.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like very different in a cool way.
So you'll never draw one studio apartment, huh? You probably
Maybe
will
if I'm
always be drawing.
inspired by it.
You probably will always draw mansions.
Yeah. Well, in my head, a lot of them are very small in like a big space.
Yes, yeah. Like the two chairs
Right.
in big space.
Like small objects in large spaces.
In large spaces.
Playing with like the perspective and the size and like the feeling that gives you.
But that also helps kind of showing you how big this space is.
Right. Like you need a reference point
Yeah.
to know where you might be in that space.
Like the internet does banana for reference.
Right, exactly.
So you
or like putting a quarter in front of something so that you can see how big it is.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, I also wanted to talk a little about the gallery that you have.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, and also the group of people that you guys have gathered together and you're working on. Do you have any immediate goals? Are you guys really working hard towards that?
I mean, it's hard because we both have day jobs.
Yeah.
Or mine's technically a night job, but we have our jobs that require us to be on every week.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to come in waves. Like we might have a really busy period of time and things with Fora might kind of like settle down a little bit. But what I find is like every time we are planning a show is when it gives us the motivation to like get back on it. And every single show we have, we walk away with like a new connection or something that's going to move us forward.
Yeah.
And this most recent one we had was really like kind of a wake-up call in terms of like how we usually do shows too, because it was smaller in the sense like we didn't have as many people show up, and it was a little more exclusive in like we didn't want to just invite a bunch of people and every friend's a friend because it was someone's house.
Yeah.
And that kind of worked out because you can have conversations a little bit more deeply, and that I feel advanced some of the stuff with Fora. So like we're pretty bad at like being consistent, and that's just a personality thing, I think. Like both of us lose track of things that we want to do, and things start, at least for me, feel really overwhelming, especially when I want to do it. And then once it's done, you walk away and you're like, oh wow, that was so important, and like I have to remind myself like you have a reason why you're doing this, and it's worth putting the time in.
Yeah. But also, as you said, you guys have full-time jobs.
Right.
That makes it hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Because things like these, running a gallery, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's a full-time investment too. So I think that makes it hard. But let's say for YouTube, right? There's a viral moment that makes a channel. Same goes for a lot of social media. What do you think would be that kind of a moment for Fora?
I think it would probably be getting in touch with the right person. Because it is so reliant on knowing the right people. And that means knowing people who are like either investing in art and purchasing, or art collectors, or a gallery owner who is looking to have a bunch of shows. That's kind of, I think, going to be a turning point for us. Like, if we just keep networking a little bit and we keep putting these shows out, you never know, like, the right person might show up. We don't personally have those connections at the moment, so that's kind of like what we're hoping for and relying on at this point. That's one way it could go. Like, if we were to go a financially stable route where we could both quit our day jobs, which ideally that would happen. But, you know, it's don't want to rely on that.
Yeah. And what's that right person?
I don't know.
No?
And it's hard to say until you meet them, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
And, like, I don't love the idea of that either, because it sounds very transactional.
Yeah.
So I think it would have to be someone who's also has our mission in their forefront as well. Like, they like our mission, they want to advance our mission, they want to collaborate with us, and it's not just like a transaction. So that's like in a dream world, that would be the kind of person.
So this person usually they invest on purchasing art, or they can bring in good pieces?
Right now, I think we have some amazing artists, but we don't have the connections to bring the artist's work to the right people. Okay. I think that's what we're missing. It's like we have a great network of artists with incredible work, and a lot of them have networked with each other and like helped each other out in ways, and that's like the immediate goal for Fora. So that feels like a check in that space. But if we want to move it a little bit further, it would mean like giving artists opportunities that they wouldn't already have. So that would mean us networking on behalf of artists and us finding the right people for the artists that we think their work is amazing and deserve to kind of like be shown in various spaces.
Do you think that it could be combined with something else as well, like with music?
Yes, I would love that.
That works?
Yeah, so that's kind of like, we've talked about this. This is a vision that at least I've had and Nora has had as well in different ways. I would love to move it into like a multimedia space. The last like big show we had, which was last January. Last January, it was 2 floors. We had a DJ and we had a bunch of vendors. So it felt more like a festival, which was really cool. Not maybe like great for purchasing work, but good for like an atmosphere. And that's sort of like something we want to recreate in a different way. So we're also trying to figure out like what each show kind of gives us. And that show was like really like community centered. We got a lot of new faces, a lot of new people, and a lot of new artists to interact with us. Whereas the last show that we had, it was a little more like focused, a little smaller, a little more intimate. So like the music stuff wouldn't be good for something like that show, but for a larger show, I would love to have, you know, almost like a festival vibe going. That's hard to do, but
don't you also think that kind of makes it harder too for art? Because once you bring in the music, people are either there for the music or for the art.
Well, I think if it's curated well, then it's not difficult.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's hard.
Yeah.
Is you can't have like a loud piece on the wall and then a loud musician. It needs to be flowing into each other. So there is a curation aspect to that too. Like making sure the music fits the work and the vibe you're putting out there.
Yeah.
I would never, like in our last show, my work, Jack's work and Ash's work are all, it's very like low vibration, calm, kind of like, I don't know, more kind of grounded.
Yeah.
Would never put in like some really like a loud rock band in that space, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's about picking the right sound too.
Yeah. Those are some of the things that you never think about once you start doing it, and you're like, oh, okay, so this does make sense. Because during your last show, that one wall was perfect.
Yeah.
You know what a
It was
wall I'm
perfect,
talking
yeah.
about, right?
Yes.
Like all the pieces went together, and that's where you kind of understand, like, oh, okay, so curation is also even the wall space, the
Yep.
angle of the wall, the color of the wall.
Yep.
The color of the paintings, the size of the paintings on that wall.
Yeah, you have
the
to
topics
consider all
on
of
that.
them. Yep, exactly.
And now on top of that, you want to put in music.
I know. That's
That
leveling
makes
up.
it hard, right? Yeah.
It does, yeah. But
Yeah.
it makes it fun. And like if you have the time, then it's not as hard. If you're rushing it, then it is.
What is art for you? Like your art? Is it therapeutic? Is it what is it?
Yeah, it's weird because I really took a break from making art for a while. I've always done it in passive ways or active ways, but the past like maybe like 5 or 6 years after college, a few years after that, I really like put a pause on everything. And part of that was because it did not feel therapeutic. It felt very stressful. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I think there's just something about either my personality or the way that, like, I don't know, my brain works, where when I really care about something and I attach a lot of personal meaning to it, it starts to feel very stressful and overwhelming. And then I get a little like defiant, and I'm like, I don't want to have this define me, and I want to be able to like approach it in a way that's more relaxing and just like, I don't know, like less restrictive. So for a while it was kind of landing in that like, this is just something that I'm like doing because I'm used to doing this. And I felt good about not making art for a little bit. And I was like, okay, maybe like that was just something I did in college, and cool, glad I did it, but I'm moving into more of a curation space. I'm doing other things. And then like the past year or so, I was like, you know, that's like crazy that I would think that, because I was making work that I was very proud of. And it gets complicated for every artist and musician at some points, but it's not necessarily like an indication that you need to quit it altogether. So that was like the kind of driving factor in me getting a studio space, is like part of me was like, okay, I'm not sure if I want to continue making art, but I can't tell until I actually do it. So, and I can't do it until I have the space to do it. So the space was like the first step in being like, okay, let's see if you're still interested in this, which I definitely am. And then this last show that we put on, it worked out where like it made sense for me to put some of my work in it. And I had discovered all these paintings that I had made in college that had never shown really. Like I did one time and that was it. So that show also gave me some energy to like paint more, and just realizing that like I don't have that many pieces of this subject that like I would like to keep playing with. So in this way, I think I wouldn't call it therapeutic, but it feels like there's energy that I have that I want to put into something that's productive, and not just like, I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes your energy, you end up putting it into places that it doesn't belong.
Yeah.
And I think that art or music or any sort of creative outlet is a way for you to productively output your energy, and not like put it into places where like it's either a wrong relationship or a wrong friendship or like, you know, a wrong like work, like a wrong job. Like when you have that outlet, you're less likely to do those things, I feel like.
Yeah. But do you also think that, as you were saying this, I started thinking, did this actually, like, why do all artists have managers? Like singers, actors, comedians, musicians, they all have managers. Is that something that's how it evolved? Because
I think
if
so.
you throw everything like that on an artist,
It's too much.
It's too much, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, yeah, that is exactly why people do that. And there's the classic trope of artists not being able to like kind of market themselves because
Yeah.
it's like a left brain, right brain thing,
Yeah.
which I don't know if I fully believe in. And I actually do enjoy like the organizational aspect of a lot of things. I don't like marketing myself, and I don't like, there's something that feels weird to me about showing my art.
Yeah.
It feels very like vulnerable, and having to talk to people about it is always like a step. And I think a lot of artists feel that way, or a lot of artists who lean toward like introverted. There are some artists who have no problem doing that. I think in that way I lean toward introvert because it's not something, I don't want to talk about myself all the time.
Yeah.
Or I don't feel as comfortable doing that. And that's where people hire managers. So
Yeah, and I don't think I believe in left brain and right brain too, but what I do believe in is that you become good at whatever you spend most of your day thinking about.
that's true. Yeah.
And with all these things, as human beings, we have evolved so much that a little thinking doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
Like you cannot just think for 1 hour and then be an artist. You cannot be that person, right? So if you want to be an artist, you have to like live, breathe.
It's true.
Like be fully in to be an artist. Because for me, I have noticed it in myself. I can write, and I write well. I wish to believe that I can write well. And then I do programming, and I also do art. Every time I go too deep with programming, like for example, if I do it for a month, then I have such a hard time
Getting back
making sentences, like talking to people. And especially with my wife, sometimes she asks me something after a really long day of coding. I have a hard time forming that sentence. And it's just because for some reason I feel like this sentence has to be logically, factually, scientifically correct. And then that's very hard.
Wow.
Because in general conversation, you don't have that thing. You kind of stretch the truths a little bit. You kind of throw in a couple of lies, and then you massage that sentence to make it digestible.
Right.
So I think once I go into that programming mode, it becomes very hard to speak, very hard to do art. And then once you get into that art mode, when I walk outside, I'm like, hi. I look at everything, the shades, the colors.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you walk like that for a week, you come back, you draw something, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
People relate to that because it gives people that feeling. And one of the things that I feel with art is not just only the colors, but a lot of it is that how do you portray that feeling as well.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the videos now, one of the things that I've noticed is that if you take a video shot while sitting down at the vantage point of a kid, those videos kind of give you a very nostalgic and a very warm feeling.
Right.
And so that's, you have to think about that
Yeah.
so long to finally figure that out.
It's very interesting because the way you're thinking about it is a way that I kind of agree with you. I feel like a lot of people feel like you have to be born with a certain talent in order to be able to enter it, which I don't think is true. I think it is kind of like exercising that and practicing, and it's a muscle that you have to work out. I think some people are predisposed to certain activities and maybe are predisposed in a way where they enjoy it. Like a lot of people won't want to play music, or it doesn't come as naturally to them as maybe someone else, but it's still something you can practice. And like with an artist, you are right. You can learn you can learn the color theory, you can learn perspective, you can learn all of those things, but you need to be able to portray it and communicate it. Yeah. And I feel like that was something that took me a while to figure out, but then once I like got it, it opened up a lot for me. And a lot of the work that I make, I feel like hits exactly that, where I'm like, I don't want to have to explain something. I just want to show you it and do it in like the best way I can. And if you're telling me you're getting something from it, then I've succeeded, because that's like the purpose of it. So the landscape stuff feels very much like, yeah, it's a landscape. It's, you know, this vast space, but I do want it to evoke a feeling. And that feeling is like a feeling that I've that I'm kind of like after a little bit and trying to describe, that I don't really have the words to describe, or I don't really know how else to communicate it. So it's not like I'm, looking at those images and being like, yes, I need to paint this. But it's more like there's a feeling and this is how it feels.
Yeah. And it happens with pretty much everything, with writing, with whatever you do, even with cooking.
Yeah, it's true.
Like with cooking, you can manipulate people so much.
Yeah.
Like you have a very hard conversation to have with someone.
Yeah.
Cook a meal that person.
Soften them up a little.
Yeah, and it's pretty much with everything. One of the books that I remember had a very good name, and I never forget that name. It's Moving to the Center of the Bed. That's the name of the book. And guess what the book was written for? A woman who's coping with losing her husband.
Okay.
Like, what a great fitting name.
Yeah.
Moving to the center of the bed. They probably always had their spot of the bed on each side. And then now she's moving to the center. And just think how, that's art with words.
Yeah.
Right?
And it evokes a feeling without you needing to know anything else about it.
And then if you really take time and think about it, you're like, oh shit, that is what it is. Like, losing a husband, you're pretty much trying to move to the center of the bed now.
Yeah.
And it's not just moving, it's just...
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah.
But how do you evoke that feeling? It's just with those. So she did it with those words, and then you do it with art. And I feel like there was a time in my life too that I would look at art and I would really try to appear sophisticated, that I know this art piece. Till I figured out that once you like an art, you just like it.
Yeah.
If you like shitty art, it's because you have been training yourself. You have been cheating yourself with shitty art. So that's not also a bad thing. Just keep going through that shitty phase. So just like an artist produced like 1,000 shitty pieces to get to the good one.
Exactly.
You just have to look at all these shitty pieces to get to actually good art. So that's what I believe.
I think that's interesting, and I compare a lot of visual art to music because I felt like for a while, like pop music or something was like, or like the pop, whatever, top 40 things that are playing on the radio was inherently bad music because it was popular and it felt really like simple to me. And then I kind of had this like moment where I was like, oh, it's popular for a reason, number one. Yeah. And number two, there is like a formula for making like fantastic pop music. Yeah. And it's almost scientific, where you can be like, this is like, these chords put together are going to create this like fantastic hook that's then going to create a hit pop song. And I kind of think about that with art sometimes too. Yeah. Like, it's not like, I mean, there's definitely shitty art in the way where there's like art that's technically really bad and like it's not portraying the way it should be. But then there's also art that falls into like the pop music category where I'm like, this maybe isn't my taste. Yes. But I recognize that it's good and
it's very
people
formulaic,
will like it. Yes. And that's fascinating that someone can like find the formula for it. Yeah. But visual art's different than music because I think that people consume it less overall. And you said something interesting earlier about like tech being kind of like the main movement right now. And I actually do think that that's the visual art that most people consume. I don't think people are consuming painting and drawing as much. Yeah. And if they are, it's flattened out on a picture on Instagram, on websites. Like it's not as much in person, which changes the effect of it. Yeah. So digital art's really interesting because like that is sort of the medium right now. Yeah.
And also another thing with the consumption of information, like right now I feel podcasts is that new thing right now. Yeah. People don't watch television. They're moving away from short form conversations too, which I think is a good thing.
It's a very good thing, yeah.
Yeah, right? So they move into the podcast space. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do this was that first, I love culture, and then this could be turning into something that I can explore all aspects of culture through this. And then the other thing is that I find artists to be some of the most genuine people out there. And this doesn't have to be something bad for the rest of the people, but I feel the artists get more time to think. Just as we were saying,
Yeah.
you get good at what you spend most of your day thinking.
Right.
So if I spend 2 months coding, I don't think anybody would want to talk to me. Yeah. Not just because I might get cranky or that. Even if I manage that part, I don't think I can contribute anything interesting to a conversation.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there will be a lot of ahs, and then really boring sentences.
Yeah, that is interesting how
Yeah.
like art affects language and personality.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm really moved by your art,
Thank
and I
you.
genuinely mean that. And I'm really excited for that piece that I'll be eventually getting from you. And then eventually I'll also be able to afford
Right.
the landscape one. And so how you are on Instagram?
Yes.
What is your Instagram handle?
It's A3_LANS.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like for a while I had a separate art Instagram, and then I realized that didn't make sense for me because I want it all to be part of what I'm putting out there.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything to put on my Instagram at that point, so I have a mix of stuff on there, but I mostly post like updates of my own art on that Instagram.
Okay. I'll also share the link for this.
Perfect.
And then you have Fora Arts.
Yes, fora.arts is the Instagram.
And what do you usually post in there?
That's usually like when we have shows, we'll share photos of that or video clips. We try to repost like artists in our networks, like the projects they're working on, like any other show that maybe an artist in our network is a part of. And then sometimes we post links to different resources for open calls and for events for people to go to.
And how do you sell your art? Where do you sell it?
I have a website too. My website is alanacommando.com. Pretty easy to remember.
Yeah.
And it just has prices and stuff listed there. But if people want to purchase, they usually just like contact me through the website or even through Instagram is fine too.
Perfect. I feel like changing my name to like Samim Battleship.
There you go.
Right.
I feel like I get a lot of attention from that.
But anyways, thank you.
Thank you.
very
I
much for
appreciate
that
it.
time. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. This has been awesome.
All right, thanks.